Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. Today, I am joined by Colin Carr, CEO of Carr, a firm that specializes in commercial real estate strategy for healthcare professionals across the country. Colin and his team work closely with orthodontists to navigate leases, purchases, renewals, and negotiations that can quietly cost doctors hundreds of thousands of dollars if handled incorrectly. In this episode, we're talking about where the commercial real estate market stands today, the biggest mistake doctors make with their space, and how understanding the landlord's mindset can completely change the outcome of your next transaction. So let's take a look. This episode was brought to you by ADEC. Are you thinking about opening an orthodontic practice? I know, it's a big decision, but saving 25% on the ADEC equipment you need to get started, that's an easy one. Because ADEC has a special program called Smart Start, designed to help you launch your first practice. You get up to 25% off your ADEC orthodontic equipment and furniture. You also get complimentary services to help you run and grow your business. And my favorite part, access to the Smart Start pricing for 2 whole years after you open your doors. That gives you flexibility to add more chairs as your cash flow grows. It's pretty smart. As an orthodontist, you care about getting all the little details right, and ADEC really got it right with this program. So if starting off with a big savings on ADEC equipment sounds good to you, the ADEC Smart Start is definitely worth a closer look. Just follow the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Colin, I am so excited to have you back on Hey Docs. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Always a fun time.
Yes. In the event that somebody does not know your name, does not know anything about the business, would you mind sharing just a little bit of background about yourself, about Carr Healthcare, and just how we know each other and how we've been working together for so long now?
Yeah, you and I go back, I think it's either 2008 or 2009.
Yeah.
And I need to find out, am I in contention for the longest relationship, or is there anybody who supersedes me?
I think you're right up there at the top.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
So it's fun. It's fun when you have those long-term relationships. But I've been doing commercial real estate since I was 19 years old. It's all I've ever done. I got into brokerage when I was 22. And I was a generalist in the beginning, did everything, did retail, office, industrial, land. If it was a deal, I went after it. And a couple of years into my business, I realized that I really enjoyed healthcare real estate. And I just started doing more and more of it. Initially, I was on the landlord side, and I worked for some of the largest medical and healthcare landlords in the country. And I just started noticing deal after deal, doctors would show up with no representation. Like when I was doing retail deals, Starbucks didn't show up without a broker. Walmart didn't show up without a broker. Everyone had representation. And I was doing all these medical listings. And it was literally like 9 out of 10 doctors would show up with no broker. And the ones that did show up, it was usually a friend of a family member or like someone who did residential, and they typically had no clue what they're doing. And so long story short, after watching literally doctor after doctor lose hundreds of thousands or $500,000 or $800,000 in these deals, and they had no clue what's happening, I realized that there was a huge opportunity to be an advocate for the healthcare provider, to level the playing field, and just to bring value that I had never seen brought before in that area. So I launched our company. Initially, it was Carr Healthcare Realty. Now we just call it Carr just because it's a little simpler. But I launched it in 2009. And in the beginning, it was just me. And then we grew further into the Front Range to where we were doing a couple hundred deals per year up and down Colorado's Front Range. And then in 2014, we decided to go national. And today we're in all 50 states. We have over 175 or 180 agents coast to coast. And I think as of this recording, we have over 6,000 healthcare providers that we're representing as we speak. The mission of our company is to help those who help others, help people who help people, help healthcare providers maximize their profitability through real estate. And there's a site selection side, there's a due diligence side to our world, but a lot of the value we bring is in negotiating the most favorable terms. There's this huge margin that's available on every deal that you can either win or lose in the forms of better lease rates, higher build-out allowances, larger free rent packages, all these economic negotiable items. but also all these other business items too. So our game plan is just to help doctors be as successful as possible and to make the most of every opportunity.
Yeah. And I always love it every time we talk and I get to hear the story again, because I can remember way back when you were kicking off your business and I was kicking off mine, and just thinking, wow, look where your business is. Say, hey, every 50 states, myself included, we're across all the states as well. And how fun is that to be able to work with healthcare professionals? And I got into doing the startup part of my consulting because I saw, like you, such a need to help doctors figure out where they were going to open up their practices, what was going to be the most viable for them to have successful practices, and then help them get the systems in place. And working with commercial brokers is really truly the foundation, I believe, to us getting that location in place and really setting the doctors up. Because as you and I both know, especially when we're talking about a lease, we're looking at a minimum of a 10-year commitment. And a lot of times these are probably the first time these business professionals have ever been in some type of a long-term commitment, binding
Yeah.
financial commitment that has real big ramifications if it's not done right. So I just thank you for what you have done over the years, and for all of the brokers out there that work for you. I know that every time my team, we call on you, guys are there and stepping up to the plate. Good job for what you've done up to this point.
Thank you. And likewise, right back at you. Yeah, I remember touring doctors in different properties. I remember a couple of them specifically going back literally 17 plus years. So it's fun. It's fun to be able to do what we do.
Yeah. So the way I would love to start off today is, when I think about new year and what is coming at us, you and I can both say, man, 17 years ago till now, there has been significant changes in what we're seeing in the landscape and the temperature and just where things have been from pre-COVID to post-COVID to, I don't even know what kind of the craziness of where the market is at right now. So I would love it if I could just have you, I feel like you're an expert, you and your team working across all of the states. If you could just give us, I don't know, what as a market update on where things are at, what are things that, that we need to be thinking about now, maybe in comparison to where things were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I'll let you pick that number, but just where are things at? What do we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. The commercial real estate market is very interesting. You can't look at it as like an entire market because it's segmented to things like you have healthcare real estate, you have industrial, you have multifamily, you have office. And I would say if you remove office from the picture, for the most part, commercial real estate, all-time high lease rates, it's as competitive as it's ever been before. Excuse me. There's not been enough new construction to keep up with demand. So it's a supply and demand issue. And when you look at things like what's going on with interest rates, what's going on with construction costs, what's going on with the economy, those things all affect it. But the whole supply and demand thing, that's what drives the market. The office market is definitely soft. Like after COVID, a lot of large companies realized they didn't need as much office space or as many office spaces, plural. And so you saw a big pullback in the office area that has opened up some opportunities, both to purchase and also to upgrade and lease properties that are not exclusively healthcare medical. But as a whole, they can't build multifamily fast enough. They can't build industrial fast enough. And they're not building retail or medical fast enough too. So it's a competitive market. The good news is that there's always great options available. Landlords love healthcare and medical for the most part. If they don't, once you educate them on the benefits of a healthcare provider, they get very excited for the reasons of what we know to be true. Less than a 1% default rate, long-term leases, people that are not going to pivot industries if times get tough. If times get tough, a dentist is not going to start a Jimmy John's franchise or become a landscaper. Like they're going to weather the storm and keep on going. And so as a whole, interest rates, we've seen 75 basis points reduction off of the federal prime rate, but that's not really affected long-term commercial borrowing rates for a whole. Like everyone thought once the Fed dropped those rates, we'd see lower mortgage rates, we'd see lower real estate rates. It's not really the case. In fact, mortgage rates actually went up after each of those because the 10-year treasury went up. I think we're going to see some mortgage rates for residential come down here in the near future. I'm pretty confident of that. How much, I don't know. But here's what I tell you. Rates are not as low as they were 4 or 5 years ago, but if you look at the last 25 years, they're still very competitive. Like we're at or below a 25-year average. And so people kind of lock on to, yeah, but I purchased the house at a 3% interest rate. It's not comparable because that was the exception to the rule. So here's what I tell you. Rates are not stopping anyone from doing deals right now for the most part. Construction costs are high. It's not stopping people from doing deals. The commercial market's very competitive, but it's not stopping people. So the bottom line is you got to play the hand you're dealt, and there's still always going to be opportunity out there. So can you get a property today for as low as you could of 5 years ago? No, but it's the same truth for everything. Can you buy a car today for what you could buy it 5 years ago? No. Inflation's consistent. So you just have to realize what's the best game plan? What's my strategy? How can I leverage other opportunities? How can I surround myself with the highest level professionals? And if that's the game plan, then you're going to do very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. And having been doing this, I started my business, it'll be almost 20 years now coming this next March here, which is just nuts to think about. And I look back and think what we were doing almost 20 years ago to where we're at now. And the basis is still the same. It's just that our numbers have changed a lot. And the good thing that I can say to any docs that are listening out there is thank goodness the banks are changing with it and they aren't holding steady. It took a while for them to move to how they were lending. But to your point of rent just costs more. Construction just costs more. What we could do prior to COVID for a $600,000 loan, it's not a different office now for an $800,000 to $1 million loan. It just truly has to do with the fact that we can't get in and build out a space at $120 a square foot anymore. We can't get in and get these really amazing brand new properties for under $30 a square foot all in. And so we just have to think differently about it. And I love your point of if this is the market you want to be in, I would think like playing the stock market, sometimes you just got to jump in and ride it. Maybe that means that you are doing some refinancing later on. All right, no big deal. We've been doing that for 20 years now where people are always looking for better interest rates or whatnot. So I want to talk specifically about just this leasing and owning environment right now. And I think we're in a really interesting area where if I believe, and I want to hear your opinion on this, if you've got the right means and it is something that you've wanted, sometimes it might even make more sense to purchase versus lease and vice versa, depending upon the situation. But especially because of just where things are at with how high rent is right now and some of that, I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit, because this is something that comes up all the time when I'm talking to my clients. Hey, Jill, I just don't know. Should I lease? Should I buy? What makes sense? I'm going to be signing a 10-year lease and it's $50 a square foot versus I could purchase at X. And so would you mind unpacking that a little bit for us and just give us your perspective from the brokerage side of it and what you guys are seeing over there?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing is, you said it a second ago, you can always refinance. People want to wait till rates go down. You don't wait till rates go down. You can't time the market perfectly. Like you said, you just jump in. If rates go down, you refinance. If rates go up, then you'll be glad that you locked into the lower rates. People that wait on the sidelines for rates to go down, if that's been your game plan, you've been on the sidelines for the last 4 or 5 years, like it's not happened hardly at all. So you transact at the timeline that works for you with the best terms available. And then if rates go down, you refinance. If they don't go down, then you didn't just waste several years in the sidelines, you're several years ahead. But the reality is rates are always going to go down. And so that's going to be an opportunity in the future. My philosophy, our philosophy at Carr is always look at both your options. Look at options to lease, look at options to purchase, look at office and look at retail. It's completely fine to go into a transaction saying, I want to either lease or purchase, or I want office or retail. It's great if you think you know what you want, but every market's different. You might say, I want to be in retail, but the retail option, it might not make sense. If the retail option costs, let's just say $12 a square foot more than the top office option, you've got to ask the question, is it worth me paying an extra $60,000 per year in rent, or could I put that into targeted marketing or some other form of, or some other method of growing your practice? Or do you want to pay that for the next 10 years? Marketing, you can turn on and off as you can't turn rent on and off. And so you look at the top options available. You also might say, I want to own, but there might not be any good options to own in that market. You can't control the inventory. So the best game plan we can tell anyone is go to market with an expert, obviously, to help you in the process. Look at options to lease, look at options to own, look at retail, and look at office, and then let the market tell you what makes the most sense. If you go to market and there's nothing to buy, then they just answered your question for you. If you go to market and there's no good retail options and it's only office, the market just told you what your options are. That being the case, I love ownership. If you have the ability to buy commercial real estate and the numbers make sense for you and the location and the quality of property makes sense for you, and the size makes sense too, you can see yourself there for a long time. It's pretty hard to beat the economics of commercial real estate. 90% of the time when someone goes to sell their practice, if they own the real estate, is going to be worth more than the practice, 90% of the time. We used to say 75% of the time, and we just keep checking the numbers over and over again, that real estate is worth more. So if you have the ability to build two assets versus one, that's highly desirable. Now, the difference is real estate's not going to kick off an income the way your practice will, your business is going to be your primary income. But from a sales standpoint, when it's time to cash out or liquidate, if you have the ability to sell your practice and the real estate, or maybe you sell the practice and you hold the real estate, that's a very exciting place to be. Some of the variables that come into play are simply how much more will it cost to own than lease? When you lease, you're going to get a build out allowance from the landlord. You're going to get free build out period. You're going to get free rent upon opening. You're going to have more flexibility in the future, but you're also cutting a check to the landlord. When you own, you got to pay for the property and then pay for your build out. It's typically going to cost you more to own than lease, but what's the principal pay down per month? Just like in residential, every month you cut a check and you pay down a portion of the principal on your loan, your net worth goes up. Every time you cut a check on a building you own, your net worth goes up monthly. So what's the principal pay down? What are the additional tax deductions? When you own commercial real estate, you can depreciate it and it kicks off additional deductions for you, especially now with bonus depreciation being at 100%. You go out there and you buy $1 million building, it's not uncommon to get a $600,000, $700,000 tax deduction from bonus depreciation. And so what's the principal pay down? What are the tax deductions? What does it look like? What is the appreciation if it goes up in value every year, even by a small amount? And you look at all those numbers, and we do that in a purchase versus lease spreadsheet or analysis. And the question is, what's the effective cost of owning? It's not just the face rate. It might cost you $8,000 a month to lease and $12,000 a month to own, but you got to back out the principal pay down, back out the depreciation, back out the other deductions. And then you get to where you have the effective cost of leasing versus owning. If one costs $8,000 and one costs $25,000, that might tell you it's just not the right time or it's not worth it. If they're even, ownership's going to win that equation every time. Typically, though, owning will cost you a bit more or sometimes a good amount more. And you have to ask the question, is this worth it for me? Am I willing to invest in it? It's no different than this. Am I willing to put money into a life insurance policy every month? Am I willing to put money into a 401k or into a stock portfolio or whatever it might be? You got to look at it as it's an investment. It's a utility for your practice, but it's also an investment in addition. And here's what I tell you, 9 out of 10 times when you see those numbers side by side within a matter of minutes and you have a good advisor helping you, you'll know very quickly which one you should do.
Yeah. I really appreciate you breaking it down that way. It is so interesting as this market has been moving, where I definitely see more and more doctors that are saying, hey, especially ones that have been maybe working a little bit longer and they've built up that nest egg where, it is an option. I don't think that we looked at that 10 years ago, purchasing right off the bat a space, or 15 years ago like we are now. And I love, as you had said, we really have to look at that as an investment. It's an investment into your portfolio, whatever that is going to look like as you're going along in your career. And one thing that I tell all of my startup doctors is, hey, listen, you have to understand that if you're going to purchase in the beginning versus leasing, and you're out there on crowdsourcing in the Facebook groups and whatnot, and you're talking about my overhead and this, that, and the other, you are going to be upside down for a little bit longer than potentially some of your peers that may be doing a lease. But I feel like you hit that 5-year mark where your business is really hitting its stride and you've got the income coming in from the business. And the beauty of it is now you should have a practice that's $1.5 million, $2 million plus practice. Plus you've got 5 years of equity into a property. And now you are really, when you look at your strategy, whatever that strategy for wealth is, you've just got this extra component that's just doing its thing
Yeah.
for you. And I know you and I both know that owning a building or owning a property isn't for everybody, but I do agree with what you're saying, that it's at least worth exploring if you are looking at doing a startup or doing your practice or whatnot, just to see if it makes sense so you can cross it off. And as you said, say, yeah, it makes sense, or no, it does not. There are always other opportunities to invest in properties and whatnot, even if it isn't for your own practice. But gosh, if you can make it work out on both sides, I do agree. I think it's a great.
Yeah, and another thing that's worth mentioning too is people think residential, they think 30-year mortgage. Commercial, it's typically you can do a 25-year loan through the SBA, but it's typically 15 or 20-year financing. And so 20 being the most common. 5 years into a 20-year note, like you said, you're going to have some pretty healthy equity. If it's a standard property for, let's say, maybe a 2,500 or 3,000 foot space, again, depending on the market, the pricing, it wouldn't be uncommon at that point to have $500,000, $600,000 of equity in the property. That's a pretty unique additional asset that you can obtain, because most people don't have the ability to get involved with commercial real estate outside of their practice as an owner user that early on, especially in their practice. Yeah, I think it's worth looking at. Again, a lot of times people come to us, say, I want to own, we'll go to market, and there's just nothing available that fits their needs. There's a $15 million shopping center, or there's some building that is just functionally obsolete that maybe it's affordable, but it just doesn't make any sense quality. It just depends. I'm not opposed to leasing either. Again, free TI or free build out allowance, free rent upon opening, large tenant improvement allowance, flexibility to maybe get into a lease at a lower lease rate and then stagger up over time. There's a lot of benefits to that. And then also just location, quality of co-tenants, and synergy. There's really not a right or wrong. It just depends on what's available and what are your requirements and what's the market offering you.
Yeah. Again, completely agree with that.
And now, a word from the sponsors who make this podcast possible. Hey, docs. If you want to have a great business, the right practice management software is essential. But some can be slow, outdated, and lacking good support. That's why I recommend Greyfinch to all orthodontists. It's the fastest, most reliable, and most secure platform to grow your business and improve your efficiency. It's completely web-based, so you can run your entire practice anywhere and from any device, with no servers, no downloads, or hidden fees. They even have the most helpful and responsive support team around. Right now, Greyfinch is giving a $500 discount to our listeners. Visit greyfinch.com/Jill Allen to learn more and see why it's one of the fastest growing providers in America. Hey docs, let's talk about Smile Suite, because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at GetSmileSuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite, because every smile deserves a suite of excellence.
So let's talk and dive into the leases a little bit more. You and your team, you guys have seen thousands of transactions. You've been through multiple lease negotiations and to completion. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the, I don't know, what you would say is the most common mistakes orthodontists or healthcare professionals get into when they are negotiating out and working on those leases.
Yeah, number one mistake we see people make is they try to do it themselves. And I know we talk about that often. There's a lot of problems with that. It's not a matter of whether a doctor or an administrator can get a deal done. Of course you can. Anybody can call on signs. Anybody can say, send me a proposal. Anyone can say, but would you take this number instead? And then eventually sign a lease. That's not the skill set. But here's what you have to realize. There's no Fortune 500 company that has anyone asking questions or negotiating on real estate deals that's not a market expert. Like every Fortune 500 company has internal real estate professionals, and then they still hire brokers on the outside. And you think about that, why would they have an internal team and then still also use an outside broker? Because they realize there's just too much on the line. Like it's too high of an expense. It's typically second highest expense behind payroll for most healthcare providers. Mm-hmm. And so the question is not, are you intelligent? The question is, are you going to capture the best terms possible? And here's what I can tell you. Again, I haven't worked on the landlord side for 17 plus years, but I worked for the largest medical landlord in the world, as well as several other very large landlords. The very first question every landlord would ask me when I was their agent, whether it was a new deal or a renewal, the very first question was, does the tenant have a broker? That was the very first question. And then it was this, who is the broker? They wanted to know if it was a legitimate broker that knew what they were doing, or whether it was a residential broker trying to figure out how to do commercial, or whether it was just a friend of the family member. Like they would sniff that out real quickly. And if they did not have a broker, or it was a residential or someone that they didn't think knew what they were doing, they would never get even close to what their best terms were. They would not even, they just would assume there's no way this person's going to know the difference. And then they would say things like, we've never done this before, or we can't do that, or that's not standard, or I don't have a problem with you asking, but unfortunately the answer is no, our lender won't let us do that. And they would just make these like arbitrary statements that were just complete lies or just totally arbitrary. And the doctors just don't know the difference of it. And or the doctors would push the landlords, and the landlord would make them think that they actually move the needle. Like they price the deal with such a huge spread, and then the doctors would push back, and then they'd give them a little bit to where the doctors are like, oh man, I got a win here. I got an extra month of free rent, or I got more TI, or I brought the lease rate down. And they're thinking like, man, I really moved the needle. Meanwhile, like where they ended up is not even where a broker would have started the deal. Like it's just not how the game's played. So if you're taking the do-it-yourself approach, you're instantly disqualified for most landlords. They're just not going to give you the same. They'll be respectful to you. They'll be cordial to you, but you're not going to get there. The next one is the mistake of not negotiating on multiple properties. If you don't go to market and look at multiple properties, even on a lease renewal, you have no ability to measure or to gauge the deal. Like you can gauge it based upon where the landlord starts their proposal, and you can try to gauge it off of how much movement you can get, but you're not gauging it based upon comps or comparables or what else is out there. And most people won't take the time to go look at 7 or 8 properties, negotiate on 3 or 4, go 3 or 4 rounds of negotiations. They just won't take the time to do that, especially without representation. But there's no other way to figure out the market. If one landlord's offering you 8 months of free rent, but you could have gotten 10 months of free rent, you don't know that unless 2 other landlords are willing to give you 10 months of free rent. You might get a TI allowance of $35 a square foot, but you might be getting 55 or 60 down the street, and you don't have the ability to leverage that if you don't have multiple options. So the whole idea of picking one property and then just going after it, even if you love it, or people say, I don't like the other properties, it's like, that has nothing to do with it. You have to have options to have leverage. In order to have leverage, you have to have a posture that there's multiple properties you're choosing from. That's a big one there. And then that's the most missed opportunity on a lease renewal. People are in spaces and they think, I don't want to move. It's a great location. I built a great practice. I just want to stay. If the landlord doesn't think that there's an option for you to move, or that there's the risk of losing you, you are never going to capture the best terms possible. Again, think about it. If a landlord knows that no matter what they tell you or give you, you're not going to move because you've communicated that, or you don't have an agent, or you've said things like, send me a proposal, which is the worst thing you could ever ask a landlord to do, is send you a proposal. We can talk about that in a minute. Then what's the landlord's motivation to give you the best terms? Like in most leases, there's literally like a $300,000, $400,000 margin that's there. Like for a Class A dental space, 2,500 square feet, $300,000, $400,000 margin on every deal, whether you believe it or not. And so why would a landlord give you $300,000 lower than they need to if they know you're not moving, if they know you can't move, if they know you don't want to move, if they know you're not even looking? Think about it. Like, why would they do that? Why would they lower your lease rate to the lowest possible number where they still do the deal? They won't. No representation, not looking at multiple options, not negotiating on multiple options. not having a strategy, not having a legitimate like game plan as far as when you go to market, when you communicate to people, how you communicate. Those are the top mistakes that people make. There's other ones too, like people time things wrong. They start a lease renewal 3 years in advance. That's not going to work. Or they start a lease renewal 3 months in advance. That's a bad one too. Happens all the time. And I'll give you one last one just to round it out. You mentioned this, like going peer to peer is fantastic, especially on the clinical side. What are you seeing here? Have you tried this? Have you any experience with this product? What do you think? But going peer to peer on real estate, the fool's game plan. Most of the doctors are talking to other doctors who left hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table or didn't get a good deal. And then that person's giving them advice saying, here's what I did. That's not the right game plan. So there's nothing wrong with asking them or talking to them or getting some feedback. But the question is, did that person capitalize? Did they just crush their deal? Did they get the best terms possible? Or did they leave a couple $100,000 on the table and now they're coaching you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all those are such good points and so much I want to unpack. And I know we could turn this into a 2-hour session instead of a 40-minute session, but I want to talk about renewals because I definitely think it's something we don't focus a lot on. But before we jump into that, I would love it if you could, for the audience, just take it back to the basics a little bit. And I want you to just really explain why I both feel it is so important that you are using a commercial broker and what is the expertise your company in particular, but also just what is that expertise that a commercial broker, when you talk about, they know the questions to ask, they understand the spread, the different things like that. Can you just unpack that a little bit so the listeners can really understand what it means to have an understanding of lease rates in the area or
Right.
TI or some of that I just don't think when we're representing ourselves, I believe there's just no way you're going to be able to have that knowledge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's fundamentally, again, going back to the idea of what do the most successful companies in the world do? If Starbucks is going to market for a new space or a renewal, like they have an internal real estate team and an external team that are collaborating. It's the same thing for if it's Chase Bank, the same thing if it's Chipotle, the same thing if it's an industrial user. And so the whole idea is when landlords, especially sophisticated landlords, when someone shows up without a broker, like they instantly discredit themselves. That's just not how the real estate, that's like going to court without an attorney, or it's like doing your own taxes. Like you might be able to do your own taxes when you're 16 years old, like on some online program. But if you have a multi-million-dollar business with employees and with assets and depreciation, you're not doing your own taxes. And so I can give you several other examples, but it's pretty obvious. When you show up and the listing broker is going face to face with the doctor or the landlord is, you're just instantly disqualified, like in their mind. They think they can get a deal done with you. They're going to be cordial. They're going to help facilitate a deal, but they're going to assume that you have no clue. And it's not unless you have an agent or broker that actually knows what they're doing that can set the tone. Here's a posture, and it's a real one. You're one of 7 landlords that we're looking at for preliminary due diligence. We're going to narrow it down to the top 3 or 4. We're going to go 3 or 4 rounds of negotiations, and we might choose the most expensive property, but it's going to be because we believe it's worth it. We might be willing to settle for this TI allowance, but it's because we think it's worth it. Or we're going to get the best terms across the board, and we'll choose our second or third favorite property if it means the economics save us a couple $100,000 over 10 years. That posture of this term doesn't work and here's why is very different than, but would you take a lower lease rate? Most doctors say, you proposed $28. Would you take 26? The landlord's going to say, why? And they're going to say, because I'm negotiating. And the landlord's going to say, no, you're not. You're begging me. Like you're bartering, begging, or bluffing. There's no power there. If I go to market and I'm talking to one landlord and I can say, listen, you're at 28 a square foot. Our other 2 options are at 25. The one has better visibility. The other one has way higher TI allowance. If I start getting into really factual negotiations, there's no emotion. There's no name calling. There's no threatening. It's just simply matter of fact, like you're not competitive. And it's same thing on lease renewals. If we're in a lease, and let me set the table here. Most lease renewals have an annual increase, like 99% of leases have an annual increase. And in the majority of scenarios, those annual increases outpace the market. Again, I keep using this 90% number because it's real. 90% of the time, when a doctor gets to the 10th year of a lease, their lease rate is higher than the landlord would charge a brand new tenant. How do I get that lease rate back to that market or even below? If the tenant moves out of a space, the landlord's going to give the next tenant free rent. Why would we not get free rent? If the tenant moves out of the space, the landlord's going to give the next tenant a build-out allowance. Why would we not get the build-out allowance? But in order to get those concessions, you've got to come in there with the fact that you have options, you have a strategy, and you're willing to move. So the whole idea of what we do is we have the due diligence side, we have the mapping and demographics, we can do all the competition studies, we can do all the things that people need us to do. We go to market, we do site selection, we do a lot of due diligence. That's on the site selection and due diligence side, but really the value is negotiating the best terms possible. It's not uncommon for us to take someone who's in a lease on a lease renewal and to save them $300,000, $400,000 by getting them money to renovate, free rent packages, and much lower lease rates. Same thing on a new deal. Is it going to put you out of business with a bad lease? Probably not. You'll find a way to get through. Will you have to produce an extra couple $100,000 per year to pay for that mistake? Yeah, that happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And so really the value is, we can't promise a certain lease rate. We can't make landlords do what they don't want to do. We can't make properties that don't exist come out of thin air, but we take what is available and we figure out what the requirements are and we leverage them against each other to try to create the most favorable terms possible. And then at the end of the day, when you transact, unequivocally, I got the best terms possible. Again, You might have wanted a lower lease rate or a higher TI allowance, but you know that when you make a final decision, you didn't leave money on the table and you got the best terms that were available based upon the market.
Yeah. Oh, such good information. Thanks for unpacking that for us. So when we're talking about the lease renewals, I want to jump back into that now. So we're going to come all the way back around. I feel like you just gave us a little peek under the covers there about this, because I feel like so many times we go into leases, especially most of the docs that are listening, we are focusing on our first lease, probably first big investment, again, into a contractual binding agreement. And we're so focused on that rent and the TI allowance and the free this and that for those 10 years. And I think that those renewal options, the 3-year, the 5-year at the end is just, that's just some fluff words that they put in. And I'll just be bound to that when we get to the end of the lease. And one of the things that you and I both know is 10 years goes very quickly. I feel like by the time we're in and we build out that practice and we're starting to make money and really doing good at 5 years, at about 8 years in, we're going, oh, shoot, this lease is about up. And what am I going to do? Am I going to stay here? Am I going to move? Am I bound to stay here? Do I want to reinvest in a whole new property or not? So I want you to just talk just a little bit more about what that means, because I am sure I've got doctors that are on here that are listening that are probably in that 8-year mark into their 10-year lease and never even thought that they were not bound, if they liked their space, to just accept what was coming to them at the end of that lease. And you talked about it a little bit, but can you just unpack that a little bit more and talk about when is the right timing to be bringing in a broker? Again, why we should not be doing this on our own, and why you are not bound to hold on to what was part of that first lease.
Yeah, absolutely. Timing, the minimum timing on a lease renewal should be 12 months. That's going to be the absolute latest you want to start, 12 months from when it expires. If you have any desire to buy a piece of ground and build your own building, you have to start that 24 months in advance. It's not like residential where you walk into a master plan community where they're building 10 houses a year and you pick a floor plan and then 6 months later you move in. Just like the review process to where they would even allow you to put a shovel in the dirt, it's going to take you probably 8 to 12 months, whether you understand that or not. So if you're going to have any inclination of buying a piece of ground and developing a building and building it from the ground up, that's 24 months. Standard lease renewal, though, you want to start that probably 12 to 18 months in advance. It doesn't take 12 months to do all the build out. It doesn't take 12 months to do all the negotiations. It doesn't take 12 months to do all the permitting and construction documents. But if you add those together, it will take you 6, 9, 12 months together, and you want to have enough time. And so that's the timeline. When it comes to the idea of the lease renewal option for us is just simply an agreement that we're going to negotiate in good faith once we get to the end of the term. Some leases have set lease rates that say once the lease expires, if you want to exercise a renewal option at these lease rates. Again, 90% of the time, those lease rates are going to be way above market. There's going to be no mention of TI allowance for renovation, no mention of free rent, no mention of several other concessions. That's going to be an absolute worst case scenario. If you have to take it, you take it. But again, I don't think probably 1 out of 50 deals we actually even consider that. And then also, most of the leases are going to say there's an option to renew and we agree to negotiate in good faith, but it's going to be at then market rates to be negotiated. That's what we're looking for. So all that does is just say, listen, I'm going to commit 10 years to you. You're going to commit 10 years to me, or whatever the term of the lease is. And when we come to the expiration of this one, we're both going to agree that we're going to give it our best shot to make another deal if we both want. If you want me to stay and I want to stay, we're going to give it our best shot versus you kicking me out or something like that. And so once we get to that lease renewal option, we don't really care what's in the current lease. We don't care if there was an option at a certain lease rate. We're gonna negotiate based upon the current economics. Like I saw a lease the other day where a doctor signed a lease and we weren't part of it, but it said upon lease renewal, by no means will the lease rate ever go below the last year's lease rate plus 3%. And the doctor signed off on that. We don't care what that says moving forward. We're not going to be bound by that. We're going to relocate if we have to, but we're not going to take that. So landlords are masters at putting things in leases. Upon lease renewal, you can't use a broker. Or upon lease renewal, you don't get TI or free rent. Upon lease renewal, the lease rate cannot go lower. Again, those are just completely unilateral statements by the landlord trying to bind the tenant to getting a fair deal. Basically, what they're saying is, we're going to charge you a couple $100,000 and you can't say anything about it. That's literally what they're doing. And so we don't really care what the lease says, but that's why we also have to go to market. We have to have other options. We have to be willing to move. You might not want to move, but you have to be willing and you have to know what your options are. When a landlord knows that you have other options, and if they don't get competitive, that they will get a vacant space, that's when you're going to get their attention. And landlords know a couple of things. Landlords know that most doctors are going to plan on not moving. They know that most doctors, especially if they don't have a broker, are not even paying attention. They're not even looking at other spaces. Once a landlord knows you've got representation and they know that you have other options and they know that you know what a good or bad deal is, that's when you get good terms. Because the landlord at the end of the day realizes if you move out of that space, the average medical space sits vacant for 12 to 24 months. Even Class A, really nice built out spaces, 12 to 24 months. So the landlord's not going to say, listen, I'm going to lose a deal with you for fair terms, and then I'm going to sit vacant for 12 to 24 months and then give the next guy even more aggressive terms than I would have given you. Like, they're smart enough to realize that's a bad scenario. That's a couple $100,000 loss for them. But unless they have that fear of loss or the fear of losing you, you're not going to get there. So what I would say is simply this. If you have a lease renewal coming up, it's a minimum 12 months in advance. You're going to always go to market and look at top options before you negotiate with your current landlord. You don't go current first because you don't have anything to benchmark it against. You can't negotiate with facts. You're just guessing. So you go to market, look at your options. And again, your broker's doing the vast majority. You might need to dedicate an hour or two for a tour and then some back and forth emails, but your broker's doing all the heavy lifting. Once you know the market, then you can approach your current landlord with, here's what we're willing to do or what we think makes sense. You never, ever say, send me an offer. If you say, send me an offer to a landlord, what you're saying is, I don't know the market. I don't have representation. If I did, I'd be sending you the offer, but because I'm not, you can assume that I don't have a clue. And the landlord's just going to assume that there's no reason to give you good terms. What landlord is going to voluntarily send you an offer that's going to save you a couple $100,000? Like, it's not going to happen. They're going to price something that makes no sense for you. So you hire a broker, you go to market, look at other options, then you approach your current landlord. You always submit the offer, not vice versa. You determine what you are willing to pay or not pay, how much TI allowance you want or need, how much free rent you're going to request, along with anything else that's important to you. And then the landlord at that point knows they're competing for your tenancy. And if they don't get competitive, they're going to get a vacant space. And if they get a vacant space, it's going to cost them a couple $100,000 to get a new tenant in there, believe it or not.
Yeah. I wish I had like one of those boom sounds, like mic drop, because I just really appreciate, this is something we don't talk a lot about. And again, for anybody that's listening, why it's so important that I know a lot of times we're so focused on the front end of this lease, but for anybody that's out there and you are in that coming to an end of a lease, you are not just saddled to, even if you love your space, I think it's worth the due diligence just to make sure that you understand what's coming at you the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years as you get to the end. So Colin, I really appreciate you just breaking that down. I know we have not talked about that before, and I think it's something really good for everybody going into this next year to be thinking about.
Absolutely. Let me give you a couple other random ones real quickly. And this is a funny one, but it ties into lease renewals. The number of times we talk to a doctor and they say, but the landlord's my patient. This happens. I'm serious. I personally seen this hundreds of times, and it's not uncommon. Think of it. You had a nice building. The landlord goes to the property all the time because they want to see the property, and then they decide to go see you. And all of a sudden the landlord's your patient. And you say, why are they doing that? One, because it's their building. Two, they want to support you or whatever. Three, they also know that it's going to make it a lot more uncomfortable for you to negotiate against them. So if the landlord's your patient, that's another thing. You cannot negotiate against your landlord if they're a patient. And people say all the time, I don't want to lose a patient. And I say this, the landlord pays you like $300 to $500 per year and then overcharges you by $15,000 per year. Okay. Yeah. Phenomenal return on investment for the landlord. Yeah, I'm gonna go get my teeth cleaned. I'll go see this person. I'll let them do my kids' braces, etc. And then meanwhile, the landlords, they're not going to push back on me. Or if they do, I'm going to make it uncomfortable. And so that doesn't change the equation. Or they say the landlord sends me a Christmas basket every year. Or they'll say things like, I don't want to ruin the relationship with my landlord. Nothing's going to get ruined. We're just going to make sure that you don't get taken advantage of. So nobody's going in there with the idea that all of a sudden people are going to hate each other. We're just going to make sure the landlord knows we know what a good deal is and a bad deal. We're not going to put you out of business with our negotiations, but you're also not going to charge the client a couple $100,000 extra. And most landlords respect that, especially the sophisticated ones. And it's the exception to the rule if you don't take that same approach.
Yeah, for sure. Colin, I know we've got to wrap it up. And you and I, as I always say, we could have 2-hour discussions here, just keep it rolling. But if somebody wants to find out about you guys, they want help with their lease, whether it's at the end or the beginning, or they're looking at doing a purchase or whatnot, what is going to be the best way that they can get a hold of the Carr team?
Yeah, absolutely. Best way to get a hold of us is our website. It's carr.us. In the nav bar or upper right-hand corner, you can click to find an agent in your state or your market. You can also just submit a contact us and we'll get a hold of you right away. But we'll basically make sure that you get paired up with a top agent in the market that you're in, and then they'll start the process with you. If you just signed a lease yesterday and you have 10 years left, we'd be still happy to do a lease analysis for you to tell you how you did or how you compare to the current market. If you're thinking about scaling or doing anything, we'll start the conversation. It's never too early. We might not actually do something in the natural to actually do the transaction until we get to the right time, like maybe 12 months in advance or 18. But if you just want to know, if you want to eliminate the question of what should I do? Should I look at an option to purchase? If I want to scale, how would I do it? We'll answer those questions and then we'll tee you up for the future for the right time. Or if you're hearing this and your lease is coming up in the next 18 months, don't wait on that one. Get started. I'll tell one more thing too. For whatever reason, the vast majority of doctors do not know their expiration date. They're off by something. They signed a lease in June, but they had 5 months of free rent, or they signed a lease in June, had 5 months rent, but then the rent didn't start until a later date. And so I give that 90% number, 90% of the time we're talking to doctors, they're off on their lease expiration dates by several months, sometimes even a year or more. We'll look at your lease. We'll do a quick analysis of it. We'll double check it. And then we also have some really great resources. So carr.us, the best place to go.
Awesome. Thank you. You know how I like to finish us up? I like to finish us up with a little speed round. Are you ready for the speed round?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What is one daily habit or ritual that you do that helps you stay productive or balanced?
Oh man, I give you about 15 of them, but I read every day. I pray every day. I work out every day. I spend time looking at my schedule and game planning, just making sure that I'm fully in control of my schedule. I'm not getting tails not wagging the dog. So that's 4. I'll cap it there. But I'm very systematic in my day and my approach to make sure that it doesn't take control of me.
Yeah, that's great. If you could add one, this is a funny one, unconventional perk to an everyday workplace, what would you add?
Flying private.
I like
it. I don't know if that's on the table or not. I fly quite a bit. I'm on planes quite a bit. And so Yeah, I would. That's a perk, and it's in the workplace.
Yeah, I didn't say money had to be attached to it. So
Yeah.
I definitely like that idea. And then last one, if you had one piece of advice you wish you had followed earlier in your career, what would that be?
Oh man, that's another one where I think I could break out quite a bit. I would say we've always got to be working on adding new skill sets and new talents and abilities to our arsenal. And so I think people get complacent or they get even really good. They just get really good at what they do and they stop growing in different areas. And so I'm a huge advocate of the law process where you're always adding something to your skill set. You're always stretching yourself. You're always trying to learn something new, whether you see the immediate relevancy of it or not, but you're positioning yourself to be more valuable. And I'm always reading, I'm always studying something, I'm always looking into it. Sometimes it's just for fun, sometimes it's a hobby, but I find myself trying to develop new skill sets or learning new things. And sometimes I don't always see the reason why. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, I get called upon in that area or I see how the dots connect. And so I think a lot of people, even the ones that are really good, they just get complacent with being good and they're not stretching themselves and they're missing a lot of opportunity, not only to grow personally, but also to make themselves more valuable, to impact and influence others. For me, it's the law process and the law of adding new skill sets to who you are and what you do on a daily basis.
Love it. Love it. All right, that's where we will leave it. Colin, thanks again. Just incredible information. Thanks for sharing that with us. And I'm sure we'll have lots of listeners reaching out to you guys. So thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun.
All right. See ya.